Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl, back again for another comic book, comic book review of Emma Frost. Now, I gotta, man, reading through this, man, this should be a freaking reality show, how messed up, Emma Frost's origins has been. But yeah, before we get into this, follow me in the links in the description below, like my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl if you haven't already. My Twitch, when I'm always live, at twitch.tv/talkativecarl. You can, if you want to support me financially, just as minimal as $1 tier, you can check out my Patreon as patreon.com/talkativecarl. Links in the description below. My Instagram, my Twitter at talkativecarl. And also, if you haven't already, please send in any questions you have for me for my Hot Ones challenge video that I will be doing next month. Some point in a couple of weeks I'll actually get the hot sauces. But anyway, Emma Frost, created by Chris Claremont and Chris Claremont and John Byrne, Chris Claremont, and Stan Lee, are usually the bulk of the guys that created a lot of these X-Men members. And like going through this run, written by Karl Bollers, art by Randy Green, but the artist changed a couple of more times through this 18-issue run. However, unlike most artists, in this is one of those few instances where you can barely tell the difference between like artists. Probably maybe some slight penciling differences, but if you aren't focused on it, you really cannot tell. Sometimes it's drastically different when artists change because their skills are so different. Here, I appreciate this so much because, like, I don't like when artists change partway or halfway through a run because it's so drastically different. Where it's kind of like you got to recalibrate your brain as you're reading through a particular arc. Here, not so much. It just felt so fluid. But I have to remind myself there's a different artist through these three arcs that we will be going through with Emma Frost and her origin story. And I love like the cover art of these books because they almost look very like those romance novels type of thing. Or sometimes romance novels or teen romance novels. Is very good. I really like that. I think the first one and the last one is probably one of my personal favorites. But before we get into the story, let's go over Emma Frost's abilities, which we're all pretty much aware that Emma Frost is a telepath, but not just a telepath. A telepath is almost on the same tier as Charles Xavier, who also is like a world-class Omega level mutant. She has telepathy, psionic shielding, psionic shields removal, telepathic mind cloaking, illusions, absorb information, download information, astral projection, what's the word? I want to say negotiations, but that's not the word. She can place psychic inhibitors in people's minds. Pain inducement, heal trauma, initiative, multilingualism. She can just intuitively translate and understand any language by reading people's minds. Mind control, mind link, paralysis, mental sedation, mind alteration, mind control. Memory erasure, telepathic detection, telepathic tracking, psionic blast, psionic lightning. For that, Emma can channel the ambient psionic energy in the air through a target having a physical effect. She used this ability once against M, knocking her out. Telekinesis and moving things around mind. But she has a secondary mutation, her organic diamond form, which is not that too dissimilar to Colossus' metal organic form. And like Colossus, she can't partially transform into diamond. It is full on covering her body or not. It's flexible organic diamond form. So with this, she has increased strength, be able to lift approximately 2 tons, superhuman stamina, durability, and telepathic immunity in this form. But the drawback with this form is that she cannot use her psychic ability in this form as well. She's an expert tactician, defense training, master astral combatant. She's a pilot, and she knows some CPR techniques, even though she's not a doctor. And of course, she has familial immunity. She has 1 brother and 2 other sisters, all of which have been mutants. They got an older sister named Adrian, who turned out to be a psychic herself, but like a very twisted and sadistic one. But she eventually combated with Emma Frost when she was endangering her students. So Emma Frost had to kill her own sister, even though she probably doesn't really regret it because she's was just a monster. Then she had like a goth kind of sister named Cordelia. Well, she wasn't malicious, but just like she just like how phrase this. She ends up getting herself in trouble that ends up causing trouble for other people, that kind of thing. But I think it was after the events of M Day, she lost her power, something. She eventually regained them, but she has, a little bit of like kind of the same psychic kind of situation. But when she dies, she never wanted neither one of her sisters resurrected, which is kind of effed up for Cordelia, because I don't think she was malicious. She's like, she was, worthy of like being resurrected for X-Men Krakoa, but you'll learn why she has such a beef with this, members of her family, all except her older brother Adrian, who eventually had a mutant ability to like astral projection, but actually can like do some physical harm in that form. And he was resurrected. He had a good relationship with Bobby Drake for a little while, but the relationship like turned sour after something happened with one of Bobby's ex-girlfriends. So yeah. So that's just the meat and potatoes of Emma Frost's power. So Emma attended this, boarding school for young girls in Boston, Massachusetts. Coming from a very rich family. And also, which I couldn't believe, she's not a natural blonde. She is, I guess you can call her brunette, but she's got brown hair. And while in the school, she, through like the first trimester, she got just straight B's. She just didn't really want to. Well, early on in her youth, she didn't really apply herself and wanted to stand out, because most of these girls in this school come from not very rich families. It's like a polar opposite, as a matter of fact, to what you normally see in like those kind of teen movies, where normally it's like the main character you're following comes from a poor background into and got like a helping hand into getting to this fancy smancy school where a bunch of rich kids are. But it's kind of flipped that, where she's a rich kid, but she isn't all that confident and doesn't want to stand out, which is like a stark contrast from what we know Emma Frost currently. Well, ever since the freaking 90s, this is a stark contrast from what we knew of Emma Frost. And her bully is this girl named Matilda, who, just jealous of her and calls other kids to laugh at her and mock her because she thinks she's like a rich, snooty chick that looking down on her and everything like that, and which wasn't the case. But like I said, it's like a nice twist to that, cliche that you see in like, teen movies. And she has this huge crush on this teacher named Ian. And, like, I knew girls in high school that had crushes on like certain, well, at least a certain teacher. There was a science teacher, I forgot his name. Even though girls like to say, they only like, mess around with like, taller dudes and stuff like that. He wasn't all that tall. He was like a fairly average height, but he was like a handsome dude, and there's like many girls like over here they're talking about how like good looking he is and everything like that. He wasn't messing around with any of the students, but girls get those kind of schoolgirl crushes, and I'm pretty sure every girl has that one teacher that they crushed on a lot. As a matter of fact, I remember there was like a female teacher that I got crushed on. It was a sub technically, or at least like try to at least learning from other teachers so she could be a teacher herself. I forgot what the technical name for it, but it was in high school, and I forgot this woman's name because she showed up in my African American Studies class. I do not remember her name for the life of me, but I remember like she was very beautiful. But Emma's life, her family is so messed up. And forget the freaking Kardashians. Make a reality show about this life. This family is sick. At least majority of them. I think, you can understand why. But I think all things considered, Emma Frost came out like the better one. All things considered. I think Cordelia and Adrian was probably like, pretty decent, all things considered, but like the older sister was so effed up. But the father takes the extreme cake. He is just like abusive by, you talk about like male toxic male masculinity. This is what the definition should be about, and not just thrown around all willy-nilly. This guy, he definitely abuses kids verbally and mentally and emotionally. And you see this played out along like the first half of this 18 issue run. Adrian turns out to be a closeted homosexual, but he already lives in his own townhouse, even though it's paid by his father. But he doesn't even call him dad; he's calling Winston. The mom is just like living in a complete delusion, not really realizing the gravity of what her husband is doing to their children. She's pretty much like just checked out. Cordelia is just some goth chick, pretty much. Goth chicks are back in like the 90s, early 2000s. They're just like a cry for attention kind of situation because they weren't being parents. Adrian's self-centered, egotistical, is pretty much a chip off the old block with her father, but it's just like she has like a different way of handling things. Everybody's just a means to an end in her eyes. Even when it comes to her own family members, you'll see later when something happens to Adrian. And then there's Emma Frost, who at first wants to seek her father's approval, and he is denying Emma to go into this kind of school dance because even though he promised her, like, hey, get your grades up and then we'll talk about it. Eventually, she gets all straight A's, mainly because her mutant power starts, coming in, and she used it to get the answers from everybody's heads. But even still, he gives like, man, it's like a piece of work. It's like, oh, should I reward you for doing what you're supposed to do? And it's like, you're not going to that dance. That's final. Blah blah blah. It's like, jeez. But thanks to her brother, who's always had her back, help her sneak out, give her a nice a nice little wardrobe, her first white dress that she always pulls off. And it's like, I wonder if Emma Frost wears white after Labor Day, because even though it's not really kosher to do so. Then, of course, Matilda, being like a hater, gets into a scuffle with her after she says some snide remark. Emma, knowing what's in her head, is like, hey, don't pick on me because your father's going bankrupt and you won't be able to fund your little excursion here. And of course, this sets her off, like, how the hell do you know that? And then she ends up ripping the dress, and Adrian had to come pick her up. But that scuffle led to, because Ian was chaperoning, they had to call the parents, and of course, the dad lost it because, like, how dare you go behind my back even though I explicitly told you not to go. Oh my god, it was like, it's awful. It's like, this kind of reminds me, my stepmother, for some odd reason, I remember asking and she gave me an answer, but I know it was dumb, but it's been so long I couldn't remember what her answer was, but it was still dumb. Where in 8th grade, before our graduation, the teachers were setting up like a luncheon for downtown. She at first did not want me to go. Don't know why, because I, wanted to go. I wasn't a popular kid at school, but like I was liked enough, and I wanted to celebrate, with them. Just have a good time. Because I didn't want to miss out. I'm not the most social person like that, but every once in a while I wanted to like just, share in revelry, But she eventually let me go after I kept, kind of like begging to do so, because it's like I shouldn't have to beg to go to an 8th grade luncheon where I will never go to something like this or experience something like this ever again. It's like it's like you know, a girl turning sweet 16. You only get one of those, so you gotta do something nice and let them doing something they'll never experience ever again. Uh, so eventually, back at school, like her powers is really starting to manifest, and it's like causing like nosebleeds. This is typical with many like telepaths coming into their power, where she getting bombarded with so much thoughts rolling into their brains. It's not too dissimilar to how Jean Grey's power manifests, where it's like it's just too much coming in all at once, where she getting like nosebleeds and stuff like that. And she blamed on the fact that, oh, I just didn't eat this morning. So even though she fainted at school, the school nurse called the parents, and the parent, Winston, fired one of the maids who's supposed to have been feeding his children. Like, well, like, you caused me great embarrassment that they're gonna start thinking we're not feeding our children, so you're fired. And it's like just cold. And even though Emma was trying to stand up for the servant, he ain't trying. And then the mom just chimed in, please don't undermine your father while he's talking to the help, Emma. It's like, wow. Like, and Adrian trying to have Emma confide in him, but she's just like not ready to talk about it, even though he knows something's up. And she just kind of lashed out. It's like appeared in his mind, even though she couldn't see all the way through. She knows that he gets dressed up and do all these kind of fancy stuff, getting the car waxed and stuff. Like, who is you doing that for? Even though he never told anybody he's doing any of that. So yeah, in fencing class, of course the teacher has to put the two people who bicker the most into this sparring match, and Emma being able to read this chick's minds, ever to get inside her head and predict her moves, all the while like Matilda's like, maybe we could have been friends, but it's like, I just don't like you. She's just like just hater. She just like a plain old hater. It's teenagers, and you get these kind of people. But eventually, when the school tests were coming up, Emma aced it, but Matilda, it had to be Matilda's parents, but the headmistress didn't really disclose that. But it's like, oh, some people have been telling Ian's, like, even though Ian's defending Emma, some kids are saying that Emma might have cheated or somehow, even though Ian's like, there's no way she could have cheated. Like, I was monitoring all of them. All of them were doing what they're supposed to do. So Emma had to retake the test again. But she, at this time around, didn't even fill in every answer, but she somehow still aced it, which leads Ian to understand that her parents pay for a lot of the stuff in the school, so we're gonna have to look the other way, because Winston cares about his image more than he does his children. But Emma still was applying herself a lot more, because she's not trying to worry about her father's approval anymore, knowing how much of a scumbag he is. But seeing how well Emma is, how she's doing, he put her in this kind of peer tutor program where she's like teaching younger students certain subjects. And this is where we get Emma's like where she learned the skill set too, because we know she taught different mutant schools, even at the Xavier Institute for a time. She is an excellent educator, and she knows how to talk with children. She is very good, and this is where she learned this from. And it used the word headmistress, and that made me laugh because I know she actually is a headmistress.
Phrasing.
You know what I mean. But then Ian watching her, do her thing, and she see inside his mind he's, getting aroused by her, even though it's like technically this is like high school, but I guess he's about to be he's in the senior year anyway. But he still was inappropriate, but he's not making any kind of moves or anything like that. This is all in his head. Of course, she knows, but she doesn't want to let on that she knows. So she has to be playing this little game. She's totally infatuated with him as well. And then one night, when the butler Bryce was picking up Emma from school, it was like pouring rain, and all of a sudden the car broke down, and he had to leave Emma alone in a freaking car where anything can happen, which is highly irresponsible. We'll see why later. And he has to walk back to the school to make a phone call for a pickup. Then Ian comes driving by, sees this, and offers Emma a ride home. And Emma's reading his mind. He is like totally into her. So she just made the first move and just plant one on this guy. And of course, the father's watching from afar and used this because he set all this stuff in motion, even though he didn't expect that part, but he suspected something. But because he was furious at the thought, because Emma broke it down to him how, like, thanks to Ian, who's been encouraging more so than her own father, and she just, wants to be an educator. She told her father, he was like, I am not going to have no daughter of mine become some school marm. And it's like, and she just blurted out how, her teacher believes in her. So this sets him off. So he set up the whole fake car breaking down situation. So don't know how he thought that Ian was going to show up at that moment to come to her rescue to take her home. But he used that to his advantage, took pictures, and got this guy fired in lieu of getting arrested. So eventually, Emma graduates, despite the fact that she wished that Ian was there to see her get her diploma. So the family goes on their yearly vacations. They go to the French Riviera, where this is not like a pleasant mood. This is just like they just going to go and trying to pretend to be like, oh, we're family, but everybody's just doing their own thing. And here's where there's bits and pieces up to this point, but this is really clinches it for me, where it's hinted at. It wasn't until after I finished reading this 18-issue run I looked it up. It's hinted at, but Emma could not say for certain in this adventure. But Adrena, she's possibly got like psychic abilities, because Emma could not read her. Because here's the thing, she kind of hand waved it off, because like she always felt like she never could, because she has that kind of poker face. But if we learn anything about mutants, more specifically from examples like Cyclops and Havoc, mutants who comes from the same family, bloodline, their powers won't be able to affect one another. So since all of these Frost children have a similar-ish psychic power set, or just mutant powers in general, they not able to affect one another with it. So, despite her trying, she could get inside her own sister's head. Literally. Upon walking, just taking in the sights and everything like that, she witnessed her father hand on this the butt of this woman, and she's like, okay, two can play this game. Since you want to use a snapshot of me and Ian to get him fired, I'm gonna use this to blackmail you. But upon trying to follow her father and his woman into this club, she witnesses her brother there too, getting like pissed drunk because he and his boyfriend broke up. But also this creep that we never see again. We only saw it twice. Once a few pages ago, where Emma was walking down the street and she bumped into him, which she got her first taste of not just reading minds, but knowing a person's memory. Of course, psychics can do that, but since Emma is technically kind of like a novice at this point, she had to physically be in contact with people, so that way she can peer into their memories. And one of these dudes turns out to be some kind of serial killer, but she was too wigged out about it to actually understand what's going on or even try to stop him. He shows up once again in his club and attempted to drug and later kill her brother, but she managed to stop it, but not stop the guy. We never see him again. You would think something comes from that, where she called talked to the local police or something, but that was that. But she ended up saving her brother's life. But things once I get back, things really kind of took a turn, because even though Adrian says he doesn't want anything to do with his father, he tells him off, but then out of retaliation, the father is like, okay, since I pay for the townhouse, I'm forcing you out, and seizing your assets, you don't have access to my money to do whatever it is you want to do. But jokes on him, he and his boyfriend got back together and they living together, so it's kind of throws that back in his face. And of course the father retaliates like an immature child. But so he ends up getting his boyfriend deported because he's Cuban. He got him deported because since he got some cops to more than likely plant drugs on him, because hey, he used to have a substance abuse problem. So that was more than enough to hey, you'll go to prison or you get sent back to Cuba, your choice. So Adrian's pissed, and then eventually he starts that's why he's getting to substance abuse later. The older sister points out about the this love affair her brother has with this other man, because this they come from a traditional family, and it's like, I'm not gonna have no gay son, blah blah blah. But then everything gets put out on the table now. Emma points out the fact that, like, hey, I got pictures of you and this little tart, like, over at the French Riviera, photos of you, like, getting real close. I can show mom. And then of course then, like, then Adrian points out about, like, Adriana's little modeling thing, and then it's like, I'm not gonna have my daughter have, like, nude on, it wasn't nude, but it's still, like, being sexualized on the front of a magazine. And then here comes Cordelia walking in, like, why is everybody yelling? And he sees she has like a small tattoo on her belly, and it's like what the hell is on your body? Why did you mutilate your body? So it's like, dude, the tattoo is the least of your problems right now. And it's like he just going ballistic, like, all my children are failing me. And then of course then the mom later sees the pictures, but she is, like I said, so delusional. It's not like, I don't know what this guy did to his wife, but he must did a number on her throughout the years, where she just, like, lets him do whatever, and just, like, crap happens, it's like, kind of thing. She just don't want to see the truth. Emma confronts her about this stuff, and it's like, you need to, cut this guy loose. He's just doing this behind your back like this, or what the heck? And she doesn't want to admit this, or admit the truth, or accept the truth. So Emma uses her powers to force what she saw into her mother's head, and without this kind of forcing this kind of caused her mom to go into kind of like into a state of shock, which lands her in the hospital. She later gets better, but then she's just completely more so in denial moving forward. So yeah, it's like, the dad just, like I said, he is just like, this drama is on a whole different scale. It's like, you can understand how Emma for the longest time got involved in the Hellfire Club, and because after this adventure, she eventually started stripping at the Hellfire Club, meeting Sebastian Shaw, and then rose to the ranks of the White Queen, because she's just like, her past was just, you want to give her a freaking hug. I wanted to give her a hug, like, oh my god. It's like, it's no wonder you turned out like a villain for such a period of time. But this ordeal really kind of, pushed Adrian over the edge, where he tried to delete himself, but luckily Emma picked up on that psychic, shout, and she called the cops immediately, and saved her brother's life. But while in the hospital, Adriana's like talking about she's sorry this happened, but she doesn't really mean it. The father is telling, like, the doctor, it's like, it's like, well, boo-hoo. It's like, he's gonna he nearly embarrassed us with this display of attention or whatever like that. It's just, like, completely uncaring. As a matter of fact, I wonder whatever happened to this dad, because halfway through this adventure, we never see him again, but historically he's been deceased. But I'm too curious on how he died. Oh, his son killed him. Well, not too surprised. Hazel Frost. She might still be alive, but she's just, like, non-existent anymore. or at least not important anymore, I should say. Uh, Adrian Frost, Christian Frost. I'm sorry, I keep calling the brother Adrian, and calling the older sister Adriana. Adrian is the sister. Christian is the son. My apologies. Christian. So anyway, so at this point, for the mother's sake, she's trying to like, okay, I'm gonna at least stomach this for the sake of my mom, because after what I did to her, is I at least try to owe it to her. Adrian thinks she's trying to like win, and get in good graces with the parents, or more specifically the father, but that's farthest from the truth. But at this point, Christian is getting like abusing drugs, thanks to Cordelia, trying to be helpful, but it was completely wrong. It's like, giving him like, pills and stuff like that. But at this point, Winston is trying to decide which of the children that he needs to leave his like, fortune to. And like, well, like Emma's a rebellion, Christian's a gay substance abuser, and Cordelia's, like unreliable and unpredictable, goth chick, kind of thing. And Adrian is just like, callous and all this other stuff. And ultimately, because Emma read his mind pretty quickly, it's like he's choosing Emma, because the fact that like out of all of them, she's more the successful candidate. But he really backstabbed her after he feigned concern about Christian and then about getting him help, but he ended up sending orderlies to come pick him up to this mental / gay conversion institute, which really set Emma off, where she's just like, like, I'm done with this entire family, I'm leaving. So she went out and tried to make it on her own. And she's trying to do odd jobs there, which she cannot keep. She lost like at least a few jobs in the course of 2 weeks, while still trying to pay rent. And she soon discovers where she can affect, cast illusions, where she's trying to, she only had like a penny in her pocket, but she wanted like a newspaper, but it cost a few cents more. So she convinced like the newsstand guy that he was receiving more money than what she was actually given. So she tried to use that gift to go to a restaurant, have like a actual decent meal, and pay the waitress with like a sheet of scrap of newspaper, thinking it is actually cash. But of course, she only can affect one person at a time. She unfortunately, like the manager saw and pointed out the whole situation, so she had to wash dishes now. And this is where she meets this a guy who will later be her boyfriend for at least a short stint. I forgot his name, Tony, something like that. I think it's something with a T. Troy. I knew it was something with a T. Troy. And these two get close. He tells her about his familial problems, even though it's nowhere near as absurd as Emma's. But the mom left the family to hook up with one of his dad's friends. The dad got so depressed he started drinking and then beating on his son. Eventually he left when he was 14 to live out on his own, which caused him to eventually get mixed up with this loan shark named Lucian, who now sent his goons Milo and Milo and Stu to go rough him up and ask for this 10 grand, I think he owes them. So thinking he can win by playing cards at this riverboat casino, which is funny. I just did like a review on Marvel character Domino, and she has like a whole thing on like a casino riverboat thing as well, which, by the way, check out my Marvel's Domino solo issue run that I did a week ago, which is up on my YouTube channel. It's really good. But since Emma's psychic ability allow her to peer in somebody's mind and learn a skill or two that she wouldn't be privy to, she also was able to see it through a person's mind's eye to see what kind of cards they have. So it's a nice little fun trick where it kind of reminds me of, if you ever watched Jim Carrey's movie Bruce Almighty, it kind of reminds me of how Morgan Freeman's God able to like know what fingers that Bruce had behind his back. And this is kind of like what Emma Frost is doing, where she's just like having Troy pick any card without her seeing, and she'll guess which one it is. And it's like, you know, 8 of spades, 10 of spades, you know, king of clubs, 3 of diamonds, 5 of spades. And he's like, how are you doing this? It's like, I can just get the skill. She really have not want to inform anybody about her gifts. You know, Troy was the only one that actually got close to understanding. Of course, mutants have not been out in public just yet. As a matter of fact, Troy was actually watching like a news report on the first original X-Men team saving the day at one point. So it's very early stages of like mutants being out there, but not fully understanding. It wasn't until Emma gets into college where like mutants are really starting to be on the forefront of everybody's mind and people start wigging out. So thanks to Emma's psychic powers, she's able to get the 10 grand that they needed. Then they go to Lucian to pay back the money. But because Troy, you know, I guess took a lot longer than they liked and kept dipping and dodging his flunkies, now he has to pay $5,000 in interest, and you got a day to do it. And they figured like, okay, we'll just go back to the casino, try again. But since like the card dealing thing isn't available for this night, which is a shame because they only got a day to do this, so they tried their luck with slots. But since her power won't work on machines, she can't influence it to, you know, she later can use part of like her, you know, like mind, you know, she's able to lift things with her mind. She can probably control like the rotors to stop on a particular symbol, but she hasn't learned that skill yet. So she getting affected, but because she wanted 3 cherries to show up, Troy got affected and he saw 3 cherries, but it wasn't really 3 cherries. So she figured, okay, I can manipulate people's minds to see what I want them to think, and I can still try to get money through that means. But the problem is, you know, every other you know, thing in this casino will have a bunch of people around it, and she might be able to affect the dealer to seeing what she want her she want them to see. But everybody else around there who, like, when they playing craps, there's too many people around. She can't affect all of them. She hasn't strengthen her powers to the point where she can affect like a group of people yet. So she later decides, okay, what we'll do is go to the counter where you cash your chips. I'll hand them an empty bucket and have the person think it's full of, $5,000 worth of chips. Although, since they was being monitored, don't know why, they didn't account for the fact that they're being watched, because I've been to Vegas before. And I watched plenty of like heist movies. I know there's constant watch to avoid any chance of people cheating. So I don't know why they didn't take that to the account, that cameras are always rolling. You can't just walk up to an empty, a counter to an empty bucket and just have them give you a bunch of cash without them checking it. Matter of fact, I don't even know why the people next to this cashier lady or clerk or whatever did not notice, she's getting handed an empty bucket. But of course, the casino owner sees this, fires the woman despite Emma trying to protest against that, because she thinks they're in cahoots, because no casino owner will play that. People get fired on the spot immediately, or worse, get the cops called on them. So now they're leaving and they're thinking like, okay, we can try, our luck at another casino, but it's so late that most of them are going to start closing. But Milo and Stu, who've been following them, time's up, day's over, you come with us. Now they're like in real deep doo-doo. Oh my god, what did I just, oh my god. Did I just quote Jar Jar freaking Binks? Oh my god. I didn't even mean to do that. It's just like a slip of the tongue. I'm trying to like censor myself because I don't want to curse so much. Oh my god. Please don't hate me for that. Oh my god. It made my stomach turn just that moment. As soon as those words was uttered through my lips, I'm like, F me, did I just say that? Sorry. Anyway, so now they're in trouble with Lucian, who's about to execute these guys. But Troy, with quick thinking, said like, hey, she comes from a rich family. We can fake a kidnapping, so that way we'll send a tape to the parents. They pay us whatever we ask for. That way we're settled up, and then we can go our separate ways. So despite Emma's initial protest, because she knows full well of what her father would do, and he's definitely not going to pay up for his children that he really does not care like that for, because this guy is care too much for his own image to be concerned about the safety of his own kids. But she goes through with it after Troy explains like, look, I had to really pull something out of my ass here, is try to beseech to your father to get out of the sticky situation, or we're gonna die here. So it's like dealer's choice, no pun intended. So they set all this up, sends the tape to the father, and the father in sending feedback whether to agree, he sends like a tape back explaining to these kidnappers like, hey, she left. At this point, I don't have no daughter. She's dead to me anyway. As far as like your threat of hanging her, well, I hope you got enough of a noose. Which the look on Troy and all these criminals' faces was like the look of stun, like holy shit. And it's like, you would think like the criminals would have like a bit of sympathy. I was like, oh my god, their own father just throw it to the freaking wolves and they don't give a lick. what might happen. And of course, when they got this little fake, hostage, situation, in the first place, Adrian saw this, so she, of course, even though it was like explicitly stated not taking this to the cops, she took it to some news people that she know of, and to put out in the media. It's like, despite the fact that the editor there was kind of like perturbed by Adrian. He's stating the facts to her, like, you put this out there on the media knowing full well, when the kidnappers see this will put your sister's life in danger. And her retort was like, because she's trying to get like money off this exclusive thing, because she's like just conniving, money hungry, self-centered, egotistical monster. And she knows that, oh well, you're a news outlet. When you get some kind of fresh news like this, you're going to publish this. So I know you will. So let's not get all holier than thou on me. Don't get all holier than thou on me, okay? But it's like the room there is just looking at her with utter disgust, like, my God, lady. Like your sister's in a cage. Like, but now, when the news are broadcasting this hostage situation, everybody in that, the dining room was just stunned. I think Cordelia was the only one, aside from maybe the servants, but the family, Cordelia is the only one that actually had the right response to this. And it's like, oh my God, like, Emma. And like the mom is just, like I said, she is completely delusional, completely checked out. Where I'm pretty sure she suffered some kind of, maybe not physical, but definitely mental abuse or emotional abuse, where she just cold, and she just says like, oh, that poor young lady, I hope her parents can do something about this. And like Cordelia's looking like, what are you talking about? And she's crying to her father like, Daddy, it's like, Emma's like in trouble. And Adrian and Winston walk in, sees this, and he knows that Adrian has something to do with this, so he just backhands her. Y'all talk crap about Hank Pym backhanding his wife. This is probably more egregious because he wasn't even apologetic about it. It was just like, I can do what I want kind of action mindset. So he completely backhands the hell out of his daughter, and it's like, now because of you, I'm going to have to pay these kidnappers just to avoid from losing face and ruining my business. And it's like, oh my God, this family, man. Oh God, this family. So now he had to go on a press, doing like a press conference saying like, hey, kidnappers, please don't hurt my daughter. It's like, I love her very much. Woo woo. Talking to the officers who realize how cold-hearted this guy is, because he just clearly does not care like that. But but before they even find out about that, Lucian's about to it's like, okay, this is a waste of time, I'm offering both of you. And him and Troy get into a scuffle, gun goes off, kills Troy, and this upsets Emma, because she actually really liked him. They shared the kids, they had a complete understanding. It's probably like the first legit boyfriend she had that wasn't just some kind of crush, and who can probably be the closest one to understand the kind of crap childhood she had. So now, after realizing about the whole reconsideration about the offer, he gets Winston's personal email from Emma in order to get in contact directly, so that way they can set up like a drop. Now, of course, the cops thinking like, oh, these are just stupid criminals, but Lucian's smart. It's like, okay, I asked for X amount of dollars at his drop off, but the detective states like, mention you'll pay half first and then the other half once the girl is safe, whatever. But clearly it's like a stakeout situation. Lucian's not stupid. He says like, we'll gives a third now, and and the rest upon safe return. But the situation, and there's supposed to be some kind of drop off, so they expect $160,000. But Lucian's like, telling his goons like, hey, we know full well that they're gonna be cops staking out the place. So that first little initial cash that we'll get, that's what we'll split amongst each other and dip. And they don't plan on killing Emma regardless. And Emma knew this in his mind. He didn't have to say it. So she had to, and this is part like my favorite part out of this entire run. Even though this is a pretty good story, this part is my favorite. Where if you play it right, if you make it like if you make a horror movie with a mutant psychic, this could be very scary if you play your cards right. Where she is just like manipulating everybody's mind, getting inside their head, incepting. It's like Inception, but everybody's awake. Where it's like having a goons thinking like Milo and Stu, like, oh, is he's going to like split it evenly, or he's going to keep it off to himself, or he's going to leave you getting the rap, or going to this pink hair chick, is supposed to be Lucian's girlfriend, who's like a hacker woman, and it's like, the way she's looking at Emma, do you think she's do you think he's gonna like come on to her and leave you in the dust? And then like messing with Lucian's mind with hallucinations of Troy thinking he's seeing ghosts or something like that, and then causing a complete Mexican standoff, and like the girlfriend is trying to like defuse the situation, but everybody except the cameraman who was shooting like the footage of Emma in a cage gets shot. He gets the keys, cuffs her, but she cuffs him and leaving him for the police to pick him up, even though he's pleading like, look, I'm only doing what I was told. It's like I wasn't really agreed to this. I didn't want you to get hurt. It's like she ain't trying to hear all that. But none of them are dead, aside from Troy. It was all in their mind. So she wiped their memory of her altogether, being left there for the cops to pick up. She goes to the drop off, casts like a mental, like a, not illusion, but mental cloaking, where she can just walk on in. Nobody sees her, even though there should be surveillance cameras still picking up her. But she walks in, takes the money out of the drop-off safe, $160,000, where she goes and makes off with it so she can start a new life in New York. And she started going to college to ESU. And this is where she dyes her hair completely blonde, because Matilda, who was her bully in high school or boarding school, was a blonde who looks kind of like a young Emma Frost. And like in my mind, it'd be on some very deep psychological stuff where I'm thinking like, this is more than just starting like a life, like a fresh start in your life, where it's not like where like Peter dyes his hair, assumes the identity of Ben Riley or whatever like that during that period in like the early 2000s after the Clone Saga situation. This is like Emma Frost. It's like almost adopting the look of her childhood tormentor in a way, because it's like a splitting image of that girl. So, and there's gotta be more. I'm reading this like, why ESU? I know it's probably like a prestigious school in New York, but like, how many schools, right? How many colleges are in New York? Okay, let me Google this, because it's like, writers almost always make, you got like a college student in a Marvel universe. They always got to go to unless they're not in New York, they always got to go to like ESU, and there's no other college in that state. Many this are in New York. There are 418 colleges and universities in New York for the academic year 2022 through 2023. 107 are public and 311 are private schools. So I get, because Spider-Man is only the first Marvel character that I think everybody know that went to ESU for college. But it's like, I don't know if Stan Lee went to ESU or what, but it's just like, I don't know how many of those colleges are new in the past decade, but this this story it was like around 2003 2005 ish, so this is well over like 20 years old comic, but it's like 20 years ago, maybe like a third of those colleges probably didn't exist, maybe less, but even still, let's say it was just like 400. That's still plenty of them. It's like, why ESU? I don't know. It's something stunned me when I saw this, and why the dean of this college didn't ask, like, okay, about like, I get it, like college students are technically like adults, but you would think if something to happen, they gotta call next of kin, some emergency contact if something goes wrong. And of course, maybe Emma used her ability to kind of like avoid that scenario, but it's kind of weird. Anyway, so she's enjoying the student life here, and she, trying to become like an educator, like she always dreamed of being. But she also had like a minor in business, and this is where we actually get her, because she has like a head up for business.
Phrasing.
So she, you can say she like still picked apart like the professor's mind, but you can see where where she got that knowledge from. She's like so good at it, and also the fact that she picked it up not only probably from her father, but also that that Lucian guy, who technically, being like a criminal, like for like a loan shark, will probably have some bit of business sense. She learned about like what was that terminology, balance sheet. It's a statement that lists a company's assets, liabilities, and capital within a specific period of time. Basically, a snapshot of financial standing. So it's like, whenever you see like Emma Frost in a comic handling some company or whatever like that, trust and believe she know what the hell she's talking about and know what the hell she's doing. She's she's a businesswoman and academic. She is very capable. But she also got this like dorm mate. She's finally got her own dorm room that she always wanted to try out, but her father wouldn't let her during boarding school. But she has a dorm mate named Christy, who happens to be dating dun 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 Ian Kendall, her former boarding school teacher that she had a crush on. And throughout this rest of this, the other half of this run, she is getting all up in her feelings because her friend is dating the person that she hasn't gotten over yet or ever. This guy was always in the back of her mind, and this dude definitely had like some kind of glow up because he was a decent looking guy, you know, with cut hair and, you know, some glasses, but like he's pretty much like, decent looking guy. Now he's like, got a different, like, he went to New York, got a different academic position, and, you know, like a college professor or something like that, some professor in the school, and he's dating a college student, and it's like, dude, clearly you do probably have some kind of problem. I mean, at the very least, they're legal of age, but even still, but Chrissy is like, oh my god, you guys know each other? You guys should catch up. Woo woo. But Emma's trying to wrestle with the fact that, you know, the guy she's into is hooking up with her friend, and she just not letting that go. But this is around the time when she started seeing these protests about like mutants, and there's this, you know, local jock at the school named Max who has a thing for Emma, but, you know, she's not paying him no mind because like she's still not over Ian. And he points out to her that in California at another college, some athlete there was, outed as a mutant, and now it causes massive uproar where now a bunch of students are like protesting, like, we don't want mutants in our school. And this kind of reminds me of the whole situation when they didn't want black kids to be learning in schools with white children back in like the 50s and 60s. So, you know, it's like, you know, pretty much beat for beat. And this is the whole point of mutants and the X-Men. They're representations of marginalized groups of the real world. And like people in Emma's close inner circle all like, you know, just like turns out to be bigots to mutants. And it's very weird, where it's like you wouldn't do that when it comes to like people of different race. But, you know, it's just like, you know, because this is the first time Emma learned about like mutants, and that's what she is, and their powers manifest when they become teenagers like hers did. And she's having these debates with people because it's like, you know, just because they're mutants doesn't mean they don't have any right to get an education. That's kind of effed up. And she like, you know, asking like the teacher, one of her teachers, like, you know, do you think that's right? And you know, the teacher says like, you know, we're not going to have this kind of debate in this class, but in her mind, it's like clearly she's like a bigot too. It's like I wouldn't have no a mutant student in my classroom kind of attitude, and it's unbelievable. And you would think it would be like a healthy amount of people in support of mutants attending these schools, but at this point, pretty much let the cat's out of the bag kind of situation. But eventually, after some prodding from Christy, she went to this party where Max and the school's football team or basketball team, I think basketball team, is celebrating their win against a rival school. But the rival school, got in their feelings, thinking like, oh, one of your guys must be a mutant. That's how only way you can possibly win, because you never beat us before. So they go into their campus, burst into their party, and start a fight with the other team. And Emma reached out to the school's security. They come in to break up the fight. But Emma started to realize, it was a basketball team, because Emma kind of freaked out because her powers was kind of going out of whack for some reason. We'll learn later. But eventually, Emma meets another fellow telepath named Astrid Bloom, who had like a heck of trouble past herself, where after her father died, her mother, it was just her and her mother, and eventually the mother met a new guy, remarried. They had like a daughter named Yvonne, and then eventually the mom kind of like stopped loving her firstborn Astrid, and just put more love into the second child, which caused Astrid to like run away. So she and Emma starts to befriend each other, because she ran away from she lived in London, but she ran away to America. And because Astrid practice and eventually allow her powers to grow substantially to the point where she's doing like mind manipulation and of animals, and able to sift through all the noise of other minds to focus on one mind, or even see into the memories of other people without having to touch them. She's starting to teach like Emma how to do all this stuff. She was like her Professor Xavier before she knew who he was. But Astrid name dropped him because Xavier long ago written a book about evolution that she learned about mutants through that fact. And you learn through this that psychics, their inner voice doesn't sound like how they talk verbally outside of themselves, which is kind of like a funny little thought to add in here, because Emma points out that Astrid's inner thoughts kind of sounds like Bach concerto. I know about it. Had to be like the musician Bach, the famous pianist Bach. It had to be, because it's only Bach that I know from history. So very old British talk. All the while where they're speaking through each other's minds, you hear all these protests with like boycotting the fact that mutants shouldn't go to their schools and stuff like that. But you also learn from Astrid that you can like peer inside individuals' minds, see their life story and everything like that without having to touch them. So you learn about this homeless woman that after her husband died, she fell into depression and then gotten homeless. Then the police officer who always wanted to climb Mount Everest, but somebody kind of dissuade that thought, so he went to the police force like his brother and his father and grandfather before him. uh, so it's like she starts to train Emma in order to be able to do that without getting a nosebleed or anything like that. This is where you like learn about like Astra's little past. And just like with Emma, she gets nosebleeds and everything like that because the mental strain of getting all that information from different thoughts. But she also taught Emma about instead of just going through one mind to get answers for certain things, you can go to a library because that's where people are more, because everybody's quiet, their minds are more organized because they're reading through stuff. You can gather so much information just by sitting in a library and just sucking it all in. And I thought this is where you learn about like her secondary mutation being able to turn to a diamond, because you get this image of this diamond here, and I was like, oh my god, we're getting the diamond stuff. But no, I was like, oh, that sucks. I kind of wish we get like the whole diamond form, but I guess that doesn't come. That secondary mutations does tend to happen, but usually probably like later in their lives at some point when they're mastering their basic mutation skill. Like, a psychic can just read minds, but eventually, well, no, that's probably not a good example because they're all under the same umbrella. Because there's other secondary mutations that I'm blanking on right now, but you know what I mean. Secondary mutations usually comes later when they, through different X factors, no pun intended, but primarily, from my recollections, usually like when you advance your primary skill to such a degree, something kind of sparks that enhances it, or you get an added effect. But when she come to accept the fact that Max is a decent guy, he worked up the courage to come ask her to dance, and he worked up the courage to come ask her to movies, even though she knows he was going to do it. She's like, okay, let's go. So they went out to their first date to the movies, walking the way back, and she sees inside his mind that he wants to kiss her, but she's not there yet. So she politely, let him know, like, hey, I want to take things slow, okay? You're a great guy, but I want to take this slow. But all of a sudden, Max, who seems like a chill dude, all of a sudden wigs out and starts attacking Emma. It's like, oh, so here it comes. You acting all snooty and everything like that. So now you so you want to you act all high and mighty. So, and he started attacking her, and she's trying to mentally get him under control, but for some reason it's not working. And she assumed it's maybe the stress because he can't concentrate because the situation at hand. So she went with the normal route where she shout fire because you can't shout grape because people don't tend to react to that. So women tend to learn about shouting the word fire because people will run towards a fire. So she shouts that, a bunch of people shows up and tackle Max to the ground, which next day he gets arrested and kicked out of the school. And Emma's worked up. Ian eventually shows up because he heard about the situation. They kind of reconnect. Emma's like, what about Christy? You seem to be all over each other, because before she went out with Max, he knows Christy barely in the dorm room like it is, and every time she does see her, she asks oh, how everything going? And Christy tends to lie, oh, I was with my parents. Oh, everything seemed okay. It was cool. It was casual. Woo, woo. She sees inside her mind her and Ian making out, going all these places like the beach or whatever like that. And this, really puts Emma in her feelings. like, why are you lying to me? You could just been straight up with me and whatever like that. But also, Emma's clearly like, not over her first crush. And it's like, I'm not sure how many of you had like those kind of crushes back in the day that I know you probably had at least relationships, your first relationships that you probably are almost never over. But like just like a plain old crush, that is just like bewildering. And she's been telling Astrid like, I don't like them together. It's like, that's basically what it comes down to. It's like she doesn't want her best friend dating her crush, or she's using those words, but because she act like these two actually had like an official relationship before. You kissed them one time, even though it was inappropriate, but you kissed this guy who, he didn't want it. He didn't want it. Mentally he wanted to, but physically he wasn't going to do it. Morally he wasn't going to do it. But you playing one on him, you got busted. Because your father was a piece of trash, got this guy fired, and once you see him again, he's technically in a relationship, even though it wasn't a long relationship, still one regardless. But now he ends up breaking things off with Christy. She eventually finds out and gets all cheesed off, and because of that situation, they just like because in all fairness, Chrissy has a right to be pissed because, like, Emma did, not manipulate the situation, but it's like because she wasn't over it, she, just wasn't just plain old happy for her friend. So she butted in and caused this situation for them to break up. So Christy decides to go to a different dorm room, which have Emma reach out to Astrid to become her dorm mate. But after having like a date night out, Christy calls Ian about some kind of emergency. He goes to see her, and after they had like an argument because she threatened to go to the school administration for Ian hooking up with a co-ed, even though it was like that is just because women can get pretty like spiteful. That's true. We all experienced it at some point or another. Women experience it from other women as well, so don't get in your feelings. But it's like she like you threatened to go to the school board for this guy because he chose, because he at least he was a man about it and told you that he wanted to break things off. It'd be scummy that he just went behind your back and didn't sack up and tell you, like a man, that he doesn't want to be with you. He did. You just couldn't handle the truth and accept it. Yeah, sure, you have the right to be pissed. Yeah, more than the right to be pissed. Sure. But then you want to add a cherry on top of that by threatening to go to the school administrator to try to get this dude locked up, more than likely. Because like if he didn't want to be with you, so like I want ruin your life essentially just to get even. Because that's the thing, like most women tend to do when they feel kind of like scorned or in some shape or form, and especially when it comes to another guy. It's just that they can't do anything physically, to a man unless you built like Gal Gadot or Ronda Rousey. So they got to, use other means to hurt in a way just to get even. But then all of a sudden, Ian freaks out and starts choking Christy, and that really set her off to go tell people. And then once Emma peers inside his mind, she clearly sees like a massive gap in the memory where the action took place. It wasn't until she meets up with Christy later to get inside her head and see what happened. When she sees the attack, she's confused. Okay, even if somehow Ian repressed that bit of memory, she should still be able to see it. But for some reason, it was erased. That part was erased from his memory. But Chrissy remember it, so something's up. But once he peers inside Chrissy's memory, it's just the words of choice that Ian used that kind of ticked me off. That should have tipped Emma off right away, but it wasn't until like maybe like the next page or two when she's sitting down with Astrid, when she realized Astrid has been manipulating Max and Ian because she has some kind of weird fixation for Emma, because after the whole situation with like the her mom and the new family, Emma realized in Astrid's mind that because Astrid was so livid at the fact that the mom just pretty much like ignored her and pretty much disowned her and fell out of love with her own daughter, she then used her psychic powers to manipulate the younger kid, who at this point, when before she went off to college, at this point the younger sister was 5 years old, manipulated the sister to get a hatchet and chop up her own parents. And Emma was disgusted, and and Astrid is pretty much like a sociopath. And this kind of harkens to a dialogue that Emma was having with another college kid, like a debate in class about the whole situation with mutants being in schools. And she, raised the point to Emma. It was like, what if some bully was a mutant and uses powers to pick on people for their, lunch money or something? And Emma points out, well, that kid is a sociopath. It isn't because he's a mutant. And this is like a good example of that. It's like, yeah, Astrid is a sociopath or psychopath, however you want to classify it, because she's insane. Or that's a legal term, but you know what I mean. And Astrid, because she felt so alone, she found some kind of weird kinship to Emma, where it's like, only you and I should, be friends and together, which I'm starting to think she probably fell in love with Emma or something like that, because she's like super infatuated. So she put Emma's mind into her mind, essentially leaving Emma kind of like comatose in the dorm room for a bit, at least until after Ian's hearing is over. But Emma, this is a very slick thing here, very great writing, I might add. Emma, learning from with the training she got from Astrid herself, learned that, because at first she couldn't get that deep inside Astrid's mind, but because Astrid foolishly let Emma too deep inside her mind, Emma accessed certain things in order to quickly pick up all the things that Astrid knew in order to get out of that situation and leave Astrid catatonic on the floor. So that way Emma was able to go to, well, she couldn't access inside the closed off hearing, but she was able to sit outside the building, get inside Christy's head while they're questioning her, and pretty much force Christy to say whatever Emma wanted to, just to show that, she's clearly out of her mind, which exonerates Ian. But then I start to think, okay, why don't you figure out a way to fix that situation with Max? Because Max is probably in jail at this point, let alone lost all his scholarship. But never seen that kind of stuff, resolved, which is kind of like a shame. It's probably the first time where she kind of took ownership of her last name, which she kind of hated, but she used it as a kind of a source of some level of source of strength. That's when she finally had to sit down with Ian, and finally told him everything about her, which he always wanted to do, figuring that he was so sweet and understanding. But he also was like doesn't like mutants, and discuss it, the fact that Emma is one, and piece together that she used her power to get this far in the first place, and probably didn't earn any of this stuff. So she essentially kind of like a cheater too, and abused her power, and and it's like, man, you're horrible. You're a mutant. I don't want anything to do with you. Blah blah blah. And this leaves Emma saddened, and so she, eventually kind of finished up school. Later, she ends up, of course, this adventure is pretty much over at this point. But eventually, she goes to the Hellfire Club as a stripper, and then eventually meeting Sebastian Shaw, and then going from there, rising up to the ranks of being like the White Queen, and becoming she met up with the X-Men Xavier a couple of times, but declined the offer to join the X-Men. But she was associated with the Hellfire Club for a extended time, was a villain for a extended time. Then eventually, the whole situation with hooking up with Scott Summers, trying to learn, because throughout this ordeal, you can see how Emma Frost, do things that's kind of justify the means. She ends, for a extended time, in a way, she ends up turning into, she probably won't admit it. So in a way, for a extended time, she eventually turned into her father and her older sister, just being so callous, and and justifying the means kind of situation, even to the point of, because I mentioned this in a different comic book review, but a little known fact, because I read this in an X-Men story a few months ago, where Emma, how some girls have a bad boy phase. Emma, being technically a kind of a bad girl kind of chick, has a good boy kind of thing. You can see this through Ian, and that's why she probably didn't care much for Max, because he was kind of like the showboaty jock type, and not, doesn't come across like those kind of good dude kind of situation. But she has a crush on Spider-Man and Captain America, because they're kind of like pillars of moral and just, and she kind of has a thing for that. So she hooked up with Scott for almost that exact same reason, because Scott is essentially on that level with Captain America in terms of just, and doing what's right. And she screwed Jean Grey out of that by manipulating him to thinking that he's having a relationship with Jean, when it turns out to be Emma. That whole ordeal, and eventually becoming possession of the Phoenix Force, and eventually becoming headmistress of a mutant school like Gen X, and eventually Xavier School while he was gone for a while. That kind of thing. So it was leading up to the whole Krakoa storylines and running the business for the mutants in corporations and stuff like that. So you see all this stuff leading up with what we know of Emma to be today, even all the bad stuff. And technically she's not bad anymore. She hasn't been for quite some time, but she walks that kind of line like Wolverine. She's not evil in a traditional sense anymore. But she would not hesitate, like Wolverine, to do what's necessary in order to save people. But yeah, Emma Frost, this is a pretty dope story. But I think Gambit is still better. And it's once again, I'm still going through some solo X-Men stuff. I'm nearly done with it. Eventually I'll get into the X-Men storylines as team-based storylines eventually. But before I do, I want to go over all this solo stuff and give you a ranking, probably a YouTube tier ranking of X-Men solo stuff. And then after I'm done with the team things, I might do like a adding in like the X-Men comic events and see how I rank them. Maybe, I don't know. But like so far, Gambit's been the best. This is probably my second favorite. This is like a very good story. I didn't think I was going to enjoy Emma Frost, storyline all that much, but I was really invested. I think Wolverine's first mini series is probably maybe like the third best one. But man, it was really good. This is really good. Highly recommend Emma Frost. 18-issue run by Karl Bollers. So yeah, if you haven't already, please, if you can, because I go to Read Comics Online website, and that's where I read all my comics. You can check out there. Don't know about like the other outlets, like I forgot what that other thing is, like Comic something. I forgot what the other website where people normally get their comics to read from, but Read Comics Online is where I usually go to read my comics, because comics are so expensive these days. You can't really like always afford each issue, and sometimes if you spend money on comics, you wait until the whole entire run is over and buy it in bulk or omnibus. But yeah, this is very good. It might not be for everybody, but I do highly encourage you guys to check this out, especially if you want to understand about like Emma Frost's backstory. Anyway, the next solo X-Men story that I'll be covering will be Mystique. I want to check out Mystique's situation. That would be fun. That'll probably be maybe like a week and a half, depending on how long the story that I'll be choosing from Mystique will be. But leave a comment below if you're watching this on my YouTube channel. I'll try to get this up to you guys within like maybe the next hour or so, because after this I'm gonna be jumping into my Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls spoiler review. But once I'm done with that, I'll post these two reviews up on my YouTube channel. And you can leave a comment, let me know what you think of the character Emma Frost. Is she your favorite X-Men character? Do you like her as a villain? How you like her now? What was the first thing that you remember seeing Emma Frost in? Because I like to say the 90s X-Men was the first time I actually seen Emma Frost, but I never really knew her like that. I seen her, but not knew her. But it wasn't until like actually read her, in like when she's like an antagonist in the X-Men story. Like that's where I actually, got a little bit of information. But anyway, I will see you guys in like roughly 10 minutes, where I'll be covering like the Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I got some words about that because it's been years. Maybe some good stuff I can like mine from, I can tell you guys about. But I did came from the movie theater a couple of hours ago to see the latest and last Indiana Jones film. But that spoiler review won't come out until like Saturday afternoon, so I don't want to avoid. I want to avoid spoiling for people until you actually go see it. But Saturday afternoon, I will do a spoiler review about that, as well as maybe the second season of X-Men Evolution. I'll have that probably ready for you guys by that point too. But anyway, I will see you all in like 10 minutes. So if you want to join me to discuss Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, you're more than welcome to join me live. But if you're too busy, you'll see it on YouTube in a little while later. So anyway, I'll see you all soon. Peace.